So I wanted to explain to you guys the transition from Joe Tendo to becoming JTX and why. And there's also a few things that I feel like I need to clean up. So obviously over the past couple of years, I've started streaming on Twitch. We've grown a community. Last August, we got partnered. And this whole experience has completely blown me away. I've had to learn everything on the fly. I've had to learn to become a video editor, a graphic designer, a marketing guru, all these different things. Always constantly adding new skills to my skill set, which is obviously fantastic. I couldn't have asked for any more. I never dreamed that this would happen. I'd be able to make money out of doing something like this. Obviously, the backbone of this was playing Super Mario Maker 2 and Super Mario Maker for a few months prior to that when I started streaming. Now, obviously, everyone moans a lot about Super Mario Maker 2, myself included, but in all seriousness, I would never complain in a serious capacity about a game that's basically given me everything I ever dreamed of. Don't get me wrong, I still want to grow. I still need to be more financially stable, but to be able to do this as my living is a dream come true, and I have to thank everybody who has been a part of that for helping me do that. As time wears on and you've put 3,000 plus hours in a game, you kind of feel like you get to a point where you're kind of falling out in love with the game. Now, I never want to get to the point where I load up Super Mario Maker and I'm playing it and I'm really, really hating what I'm doing. And that has not happened or come anywhere close to happening. I need to be clear about that. But the truth is I cannot play that game forever. And I cannot play that game all the time forever. So as you'll know, in recent months, we've started playing quite a few different games, including ROM hacks too, which I really, really enjoy, which is obviously not a million miles away from Mario Maker, but still quite different. And again, there are a lot of people who want to watch Mario Maker, and I completely understand that. If Mario Maker is your thing and you only like watching me play Mario Maker, I'm not one of those people that hates on people for going to watch somebody else if they like watching Mario Maker and they don't want to watch me play a different game. That's absolutely fine. I'm just grateful for people that come in and support me whenever they do, however often they do it. Now, this will continue and I'll continue to play different games. Maybe I'll play another game and fall in love exclusively with that. I can't see that happening because I'm really enjoying doing variety, but I really enjoy ROM hacks at the minute. I think that's going to end up as the lion's share of my content. But obviously, there's a lot more alongside now with this podcast channel and a tech channel to help you on your way if you want to become a streamer yourself. And again, before I go into the rest of this video, I have to reiterate, this is a dream job and it's a dream come true. And I never dreamed that it would happen. Of course, nothing in life is perfect. There is no such thing as a perfect job. There is no such thing as a perfect partner. There is no such thing as a perfect friend. There is no such thing as a perfect parent. Nothing is perfect. Nobody is. So it wasn't long after I started streaming on Twitch that I noticed there was quite a lot of toxic people around. And a lot of these people were trying to come across as they were nice people. I noticed very quickly, because my stream grew pretty quickly in Mario Maker 1, there wasn't that many streamers around. And there were quite a few who suddenly didn't like what I was doing or the fact that I was on the scene. It didn't take long for me to fathom those people out, and I decided just to ignore and get on my way. So obviously I learned my craft. You know, I made some mistakes in some of the people I trusted, some of the people I took on board, some of the people I had as moderators, but I mean, it was all a learning curve. It was all completely new to me. But this last year in particular, I've had quite a few issues, normally through just standing up for things that I believe to be morally correct. So I want to go through a few of these instances of issues that I've had with people, sometimes on social media, but not always, sometimes a few of them through the actual platform of Twitch. Now, you might think, well, Joe, why would you go back through that now? If it's already been and gone, why go through it again? And the answer is pretty simple. I've had quite a few people that have contacted me through DMs and said, hey, you know, I checked out you and your channel. I find it cool stopping by. There was a bunch of guys who said, you know, that you were an asshole or you were this or you were that, but I don't see it myself. I don't really care much for people who talk behind my back because they are not the kind of people that I want to win the respect of anyway. But I did want to make a few things clear because, you know, I can tell you my side of the argument on Twitter or a twit longer or whatever, but they will get lost. People won't read them. I feel like in a video, you can see if somebody's being more genuine. I think it's much easier to see if somebody's being genuine through video. And before I go through all these, it's worth noting as well that everything I talk about and everything that I've had a particular issue with and spoken out clearly, I've had evidence to back it up. I've got receipts to back it up. So if there's anything that you want to know in more depth, because it might be somebody that you're close to, somebody that you talk to, somebody that you respect or admire, feel free to message me and I'll let you see anything that you want to see that backs up what I'm saying. So the first problems I found that I had on Twitter especially was last September when I called out some homophobia that had been happening in a Discord group called the Versus Discord. Now, this Versus Discord was made for people who played Super Mario Maker 2 online, for people to find each other and people from their regions, get to know each other, create a bit of a community. The idea was very good in the Discord, took off very quickly. Unfortunately, there were quite a few people making what could not be argued as anything but homophobic comments. And now here's the thing, obviously I'm completely against any type of homophobia, but I do also respect people's right to freedom of speech. But the problem I had in this Discord was that there was a lot of young people, a lot of impressionable people in that Discord, and it was simply not the place for people to be airing those kind of voices. So before anything else happened, I tried to take it to the person who was manager at the Discord at the time, SV John Wayne, who repeatedly failed to deal with what was happening within the Discord. And I made it clear to him that, we can get this sorted and just move on and make sure it doesn't happen again. Or, I have to let my community know what's happening, because I was well associated with that Discord. I'd arranged tournaments through that Discord and spoke to people, and I had viewers from that Discord, and I had to protect myself as well as protecting some of the young people who were in there. So eventually I called out what happened, and it didn't go down well with the people mainly of Versus Discord and the people who ran Versus Discord. There were people on my side backing me. There were people from the Discord that weren't, and I didn't really care about that. I just found it incredibly strange that it was only people affiliated with this Discord would so starkly defend what had been said and what had happened and allow it to continue. So this was not about, and the main accusation that came out of it was you doing this for clout. I mean, that would be pretty interesting, because I had so many viewers that helped me get over the line to partner that were in the Versus Discord. I'm not really sure how they thought that calling people out and showing people what was going on in there was going to help me in any way. I knew it wasn't. I knew it wouldn't help me in terms of numbers, but I would rather not have those people as part of my channel or anything to do with me. I think what I took away was that it's incredibly important to keep an eye on the people who are supposed to be keeping an eye. So there were people in there who were not doing their jobs as moderators or owner of that channel. And this was incredibly dangerous. I got DMs from very young kids, 13, 14, who'd been made to feel very uncomfortable. And they were in a place where they didn't want to leave because they'd made friends in there. And it really made me think about moderation and how important that is. So my takeaway was that it's my takeaway after that it was more important than ever to be straight about what you tolerate and what you don't tolerate. And there are spaces for people to be educated. There are spaces for people to have debates. This was nothing to do with that, and it had very young people in it. So in my opinion, and what a lot of people seem to agree with, was that you can't have that sort of rhetoric, especially around young and impressionable minds. Okay, so moving on to the next issue, which was something I was massively attacked for very early on this year. There is a streamer and somebody who works for Warp World called Moneystreams. Now, Moneystreams had a history of going out of her way to out and retweet and call out people who were accused of assault and sexual assault of any kind of nature. And she was also an advocate of believing women when women are saying that they've been abused. Now, before I go into that, I just want to say that I've always been in the position where if I have a friend, an acquaintance, a member of the family, and they come to me and they explain that they've suffered some sort of abuse, of course, I'm absolutely going to believe them. In my opinion, what that doesn't mean is that I can automatically go to the accused, put it all over social media, get my pitchfork, go around the house and smash their windows and say, hey, what you've done is wrong, you need to be locked up. Because life doesn't work like that, unfortunately. It's never worked like that. No justice system in the world works like that. And there's a reason for that. Because you have to have evidence for anything. Doesn't mean that the female has lied. Do I think we have a perfect system for it? Absolutely not. But my position was always from the get-go. People are sharing all sorts. And yes, it's not that I disbelieve women. But if it becomes that powerful, anybody with any sort of evil streak inside them can simply decide to ruin somebody's life without even knowing them or without even probably having gone near them. So Moni had already had an issue with somebody, a member of the SMW community, who she deemed had been abusive to her. Now, I knew about this, but what I called her out on was absolutely nothing to do with this. And it said in the message, it was nothing to do with that whatsoever. So then not long after, she'd been calling all these people out for different reasons. And these were people that had nothing to do with her, people she didn't know a lot of the time. And she was smearing them all over Twitter, not actually knowing whether they'd done anything wrong or not. Dragon Feeney wrote quite a long piece about how she believed to be bullied by Grand Pooh Bear, and how she'd actually been sexually assaulted by Grand Pooh Bear. Now, again, I don't have an opinion on that because I can't. I don't disbelieve Feeney, and I don't necessarily believe that Grand Pooh Bear would do it. There's just no way anyone can know. People have picked sides or whatever, and that's up to them. I have no idea. How would I know? I just always respected them both in their own rights as content creators. I could see from what Feeney said that she felt like she was being bullied slightly by what was happening in some of the streams. But that's the only thing that I had evidence of. That's the only thing most people had evidence of. So Moni works for Grand Pooh Bear, and she works for the Warp World team. And she's always been very good at making herself known in those circles. Now, obviously, this comes out and you would think, well, yes, this is going to be difficult for her because this is a friend of hers. This is not going to be something that's easy for her to talk about. But let's not forget, there's the people that she had no idea who they were, and she was happy to smear all over Twitter. When it comes to a friend, she said nothing. The whole situation, these are people she knew. She said nothing. People were looking to her because they respected her and they believed her rhetoric, and she said absolutely nothing. Now, like I just said, it's going to be more difficult because it's a friend. I can understand it from that angle. But obviously, supporting your friend means that you tell them when they're wrong, right? It means that you stick to your morals. It means that whatever happens, your morals and your beliefs, you stick by them. Otherwise, you are making these claims or making these tweets for another reason. Now, what would that reason be? Well, it's no secret, although you can't go back because Moni deleted everything from her Twitter before all this happened. But there are so many tweets of virtue where she's saying what the obviously right thing to do is, and people are going, yes, 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 I agree. And she's happy to lap that up. But the minute people are looking at her to go, well, what do you think about this? She says nothing. So I call her out for this behavior because I don't think that's right. I believe that everybody can say whatever they want on their own platform. But if you're going to make claims and you're going to say things about people on an open public platform, then you should be able to back it up as well when people question you. So I called her out for the fact that she had been calling people out, telling people to believe women the minute that they told you something had happened. And then when it happened with her friend, she said nothing. So I retweeted it. I put it out there. I called her out. The first thing she did was accuse me of talking about her own personal abuse. There was no mention of her personal abuse in my tweets. Not once, not a thing, but that's the first thing that she says. It actually says in my tweet, calling out many other people, like plural people, calling out people, nothing to do with her and her abuse. And so she's retweeting it with this tweet saying, I'm calling her out for her abuse and she doesn't deserve it. She's a victim. And people just start responding to me straight away saying, hey, who do you think you are talking about her abuse? You're an asshole. And I'm like, hang on a minute. I haven't mentioned her abuse. And then people are saying, oh, it's up to her. She can do what she wants. And I'm thinking, yeah, it is up to her. She can say exactly what she wants. But it looks pretty stupid when she doesn't stand by what she says. That all the people have been lapping it up while she's been gaining all those likes on Twitter, all those likes and all those follows on Twitter because she's seen as somebody that stand up and they like what she stands for. So I was attacked by many people, some of whom later deleted what they'd put after I told them to actually read what I'd written in the first place. I was attacked by people from Warp World. I was attacked by an Australian streamer called Muzz, who basically just swore at me. And told me to fuck off with that bullshit. He didn't really make a good point. All he said was that it was up to her when she wanted to speak about it, blah, blah, blah. I knew it was up to her. She could speak to it when she wants. And I didn't tell her she had to. I just thought it was hypocritical, which it was. But he got to a point where he felt like he'd won the argument, even though he'd made no points whatsoever. But you know, there's nothing you can do about uneducated people who don't know how to debate. And again, I believe that what happened was he flew into this conversation thinking that I had actually been speaking about Moni's personal abuse, which I hadn't, and that he got riled up for whatever reason. Maybe he was having a bad day. In all fairness, he messaged to apologize, but only for swearing. And then when I tried to talk to him more, because he'd left the conversation in the first instance, he didn't reply. Now, obviously, if you feel that strongly about something, and bear in mind that I was always respectful, never swore at anybody, you would think that you'd like to get your side across on the debate, not just leave it. Now, obviously, I mentioned Warp World in the tweet. This, of course, doesn't mean that everyone who works for Warp World has the same point of view, but I will say there was a lot of people backing up what she said with likes and backing up with comments about poor Moni. She just acted like a complete victim, shut down her Twitter, said she couldn't cope with it. And when she came back, reopened her Twitter, everything old had gone. She'd gone through the lot, deleted all the back history. Why? Why would you delete everything from the start of your timeline on Twitter? If you believed in everything that you said and you stand by your morals and you don't believe you've done anything wrong, then why have you deleted everything? I mean, it doesn't take Bergerac to work out what's gone on there, does it? There were a few more minor skirmishes that I had with people over my time through being on Twitch and Twitter. My takeaway from this was that it became very clear to me that people weren't interested in reading or listening to two sides of a story. Now, nobody that ever does that will ever be able to debate, because they are blinkered by their feelings for a person or their respect for a person. It's my opinion that you should try and look at everything with an unbiased opinion, especially in a debate. And of course, that's not always easy, because we're human beings and we have feelings about things and we get passionate about different things. But the scary thing is in social media is people can believe that they're right, because there's so many people who want to be vocal about things, stay in a smaller minority, but shout really loud, and they like each other's stuff and they boost each other's posts. And they start to believe that because these people are liking their posts, retweeting their stuff, then they're agreeing with them. But in reality, it's just a drop in the ocean, and the algorithms throw those people at them, and they believe that they are part of a majority when more often than not, then they are not part of a majority. Like I say with my takeaway, my advice to people would be just try and look into both sides of things. Read everything. Look back. Before you share that post, is it real? Is it fake news? Is there any research you can do? Are there any questions you ask? So in Moni's call out to the streamer and gamer that she'd accused of the mental abuse, when this all came out, she made a post explaining how she'd been abused. I can't really comment on that because the post is gone. And I wasn't, it was just something I read quickly and I wasn't interested enough, because why would I be, to take like receipts of it? But it was what it was. People had their opinions and whatever. But even though I wasn't part of the SMW community at the time and I was in the Super Mario Maker community, I wanted to move over to Super Mario World. And if the claims were right about this person, I wanted to know what was going on. This claim also came out just after this person had been accused of being transphobic for many different reasons, for having a friend who'd said some stupid things, admittedly, that I could see. But again, I didn't really know the ins and outs, which is why I went to the trans community to start asking some questions about what had happened, so that if this was true, then I could avoid them myself. But I was met by some incredibly defensive members of the trans community. Everything, all the answers that I got were kind of a bit ambiguous, and I was just basically told that I should just be backing trans people and believe in trans people, and it was like, well, I completely back trans people if they want to be trans, because why would I care, right? What anyone else wants to do with their life. I'm not saying that it's as simple as that. Of course it isn't. There are many, many problems that we have, whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not. There are always going to be problems with that in life and society. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't care less. I don't care what you do. I don't care who you fall in love with. I don't care who it is you think think you want to be or don't want to be. I don't care. But I just wanted to know what had happened, you know, before I made any judgments on anything. I never really got anything substantial on that, so I don't really know what had happened. But again, there were loads of people sharing things who I'm pretty sure had no evidence of anything themselves. They just went along with it. Some of them, you know, if they were part of the trans community and they've faced transphobia, you can understand it to an extent, because they are probably incredibly frustrated. Not that I'd know what that feels like, of course, but at the same time, it's one of those, you know, where's the evidence kind of thing. Then there was a load of people who were not part of the trans community, some who I'm absolutely sure their heart was in the right place with what they were doing, but then I'm pretty sure there was a load of them that was like, hey, look at me, you can count on me, you can back me and my channel and what I do, because I'm for trans rights and I completely agree with what's happening, and this person should be cancelled from Twitch. Plenty of virtue sigglers sticking their teeth straight into that. And you can tell who these people are from a mile away, because unless it's a big issue, unless it blows up, they're not involved. And they don't care day to day about a trans person or anything else. So I was recommended by a friend that I got somebody called Tubby Tub on the show, who was somebody who was nearing partner, member of the LGBT community, and maybe we could talk about some of the LGBTQ stuff, as well as talk about them on the podcast. The podcast had proved very popular up to that point in the short time I've been doing it, and I've not done any for a while, but I'm going to be doing a lot more again soon, like a tiny plug for you there. The podcast is also on this channel as well as my original channel. So I messaged Tubby Tub. I asked him if he'd like to be on. He said yes. I asked if he was okay to talk about some of the LGBT issues, and he said that would be fine. So I got him on. We had the podcast. I was very pleased with it. When we finished, he seemed very pleased with it. He even said to me that he'd be happy to share it. And we spoke for around 10 to 15 minutes after it had finished as well. So it's not like he was in a hurry to get out of there. So everything was cool. I uploaded the podcast. I got some great feedback from the LGBT community as well, from the people that I knew in the LGBT community. But a couple of days later, I received a message from Tubby Tub asking to take it down. And I said, well, okay, you want me to take the video down, but you know, what's the reason? Because obviously putting these things together takes time and it takes work. And I had been very clear that at any time, if there's anything that we spoke about, he wasn't happy about, to simply tell me. I can't reiterate that enough. I say it to anybody that I do the podcast with. I'm very clear on that. I'm very, very clear on that. And he said he didn't want to talk about it. He just wanted to take it down. Now, obviously, I'm not just going to take the video down that I put all that work on when they won't even tell me, because if I have done something seriously wrong as well that I haven't even thought about, I need to know. He was very reluctant. Then he gave a vague reason saying that he wasn't happy with how he represented his community. I'm a little bit confused by this, because I thought, well, but you know, you are part of the community. So, and you're only speaking for yourself. I didn't understand why. But then he told me he'd given the video to 6 separate people in the LGBT community, and they were not happy with it. Why weren't they happy with it? Let's go through it. Okay, so first one is tone policing. Don't tell people within any oppressed community that they don't have the right to be upset that they are oppressed. I mean, you can watch it for yourself and, you know, get back to me on whether you think I did that. Defending J.K. Rowling, he called the allegations against her preposterous. He said that the person that was alleging the transphobia based on her new book, he looked silly. Yeah, because they were saying that the new book was transphobic because the killer was a man who dressed up as a woman. It doesn't actually say in the book whether they are trans. It just says that the man dresses up as a woman, and it's for a disguise in the book. And then they're saying, well, you're making trans people look like murderers. I mean, it's a book. And actually, like, isn't that more inclusive? I don't know. Pretending to care about damaging the trans community when people call out transphobic too loudly. Another example of tone policing. I mean, of course, if you shout something really loud and don't listen to people, they're probably not going to listen back to you. And that's the case for pretty much anything. Yeah, it's difficult to reason with bigots and people who have these views, of course. Would you think that acting in the same kind of ilk is going to help anything? Probably not. He's constantly using, talking about me, the words "I worry" as a guise for things he's uncomfortable with. I mean, if I was uncomfortable with this stuff, I would probably not talk about it or avoid it because I'd be that uncomfortable. I wouldn't want to do it. When it comes to the LGBTQ community, I've actually lived with members of the LGBT community. I've met people from the community from many different big cities in England through a very old friend of mine. And we've frequented gay bars. We've been on pride marches. It's probably not, if I felt uncomfortable, that's probably something I wouldn't do. And it's funny because when I've been out and met these people from the LGBT community, from my point of view, they seem to be very different from the people who are being really vocal on Twitter, which is very interesting. It's not something that I can substantiate because obviously it's anecdotal, but it is something that's worth noting that these communities that have these groups on social media, they all like to sing from the same hymn sheet, as in they all like to be saying the same thing, which is why I believe Tubby Tub was told that the interview wasn't good and what he'd done was wrong, which I think is wrong because he's part of the community. How is his point of view wrong? Surely it's valid. He's part of the he's a gay man, and what makes his opinion on everything not valid? It can't just be because other people in that community don't agree. One person, I can't speak on behalf of that community, but neither can any one person of that community. There are things that are facts and there are things that are point of view. And if they didn't agree with the things that were his point of view, then that's just a disagreement that they should probably be talking about. I don't know whether they did, but that's basically what I was trying to do. But people don't like it if you do that, apparently. On the body positivity subject, a lot of people pretend to be worried about people's health when commenting on their weight or body, too skinny, too big, etc. You need to be careful on this subject and just respect people, period, regardless of their weight situation. I don't honestly remember this part where we were talking about weight. Tubby was actually talking about how he'd lost quite a lot of weight. And I think I probably mentioned that, of course, you can have body positivity, but then there are health issues with being severely overweight or severely underweight, of course. And again, it's mainly just talking about the topic and asking questions. It's nothing to do with having anything against people who carry more or less weight. One of the points here, which is very important, cis men discussing trans suicide without the input of a trans person can be very problematic. It's important to know when you're crossing the line about something you have no authority talking about. It can be very triggering for trans people. Now, what I was talking about was facts. Trans suicide rate is astronomical. The rate of trans suicide pretty much outstrips any rate of suicide in any other community. That is a fact. We have the data to back it up. And to be honest, if you don't want anybody but trans people to talk about it, then how are people going to come round to the idea that this is a problem? Because the people in the trans community already know this. Most of them should already know this if they don't already know this. So what we're going to do about it, because the trans people alone cannot deal with that on their own. And the simple reason for that is that there are not enough trans people to deal with that. These people didn't want to talk to me. I don't know whether they thought that I actually don't care and I want to see people die from suicide. But I can categorically tell you that that's not the case. I wouldn't want to see my worst enemy die from suicide. It's at this point that I kind of realized what I was dealing with. There's a big thing here that says there are not 96 pronouns. This is another idea perpetuated by right-wing media. Here's the thing. There aren't 96. There are actually more. I did not source this from right-wing media. I sourced this and did my research because I always do from LGBT friendly sites. You can find in a very quick, lazy Google search that there are a substantial amount of pronouns. And what I was talking about was the fact with having so many, this can be a problem because nobody's going to be able to remember all those pronouns for a start. And my suggestion was that, like, if that's the case and people want a different pronoun, then people are going to have to be quite patient, and people shouldn't have a problem, therefore, with asking, because it's not going to be easy to remember that many pronouns. And also, a lot of these pronouns mean the same thing. So for me, it gets to the point where you've got a pronoun for this, and this other pronoun means the same thing. So why is there two? It's just because then you're picking the one that you like better. And then it's not about what fits you. It's not about who you are anymore. And then when it becomes not about who you are, then people aren't going to care, because then you're making choices. You know, we should care about who people are. So if you are trans, if you are non-binary, that's who you are. I fully believe that. People are who they are. And my point was always that with so many pronouns, it completely waters down the point of having the pronouns in the first place. It says there's overarching themes that make this problematic, including him speaking as if he has the authority to talk on these issues when he's not part of that community. He's not giving Tubby opportunity to speak when he is part of the community. Heterosplaining, in brackets. Something you could say to them is to look at is where he's getting his info. Sounds like a lot of things that homophobic and anti-LGBT people make up. Points of views from people in the community. Okay, so one, I gave him so many opportunities to speak. Yes, there'll be times when I'm not going to pause for a long time because we're making a podcast. And importantly, I do not make any cuts on the podcast so that nobody can be edited to be made to look in a different light or have said things in the wrong context. I'm very, very adamant that that'll never happen, and I won't edit the podcast. There are so many times, if you want, you can watch it, you can listen to it, where I say, I don't know what that's like. I can't talk from the position of. I don't know how many times I have to say it in the video. Like, it's like they didn't watch. This is what I don't understand. It's like they gloss over, like, what it is that I'm actually saying and pick out what they want for something to get back at me for. And as I say, the question of where I get my info from, I mean, this whoever it is, or whether it's a different person, has told them that there's not 96, well, there's more, like over 100 pronouns recognized by many LGBTQ friendly sites. And I'm not talking about like Reddit pages, I'm talking about big sites that are out there, and you can see for yourself. Of course, talking about the LGBT community is always going to be difficult. And it seems like a lot of the people who are shouting on Twitter, and I'm not calling the LGBT community out for this, because the majority of the people that I have met from the LGBT community in real life are actually very understanding, very open-minded, and most of them actually understand that, of course, why would everybody know everything about the LGBT community when we all have so many things that we have to learn and get on with in our own lives anyway? And of course, there's no data or anything for that. It's all anecdotal, but I think that's worth bearing in mind. The big takeaway for me from this is that I believe this to be a small group shouting very loud, and I am not going to tar the LGBT community with that brush. And I don't believe that most of the people in that community around the world are like that. So that's just a few of the issues that I have come across. This kind of stuff doesn't get to me on a daily basis. I just find it incredibly shocking that people almost want to close down open speech and discourse. This is incredibly dangerous to do. You know, whether people are right or wrong, it's important that we talk, because that's how we come to mutual understandings of things. We don't live in a perfect world of democracy by any stretch of the imagination, and I'd never pretend that we do. But I believe we're certainly better off than we were 100 years ago, for a start. And it's always been through speech. We've always got to peace through speech. We've always come to agreements through talks. If we stop talking and stay on polar opposite sides to each other, this is when bad things happen. This is when people get misinformed. This is when people develop these echo chambers where they believe that they are in the majority because it's all they hear and that's all they're conditioned to do and think. So if I was to ask anything, because I'm not telling people what to do, if I was to ask anything, I would say, just have a think about, talking to that person if you think they're wrong. And do it respectfully, you know, do it without cursing at people, do it without shouting at people, do it without raising your voice. Just ask questions. There is absolutely nothing wrong with asking questions to try and understand better. You're not always going to agree with people, absolutely not. But whether you agree with me, whether you agree with another person, think it through. Don't just go along with what other people think. Make your own mind up. Maybe you don't want to get involved, and that's absolutely fine as well. And not everybody has the capacity to get into these kind of debates. But if you don't have the capacity to do that, or you don't feel comfortable doing that, then stay well away from it. Don't back those posts. Don't like those comments, because I would argue that if you are doing that, then you have something to say, or you'd weigh in on it because you are supporting it. So I wanted to get all this out and talk about it once again, because as I say, I've received messages where people say, oh, you know, people say this about you. Half of these people haven't even spoken to me in the past. So I wanted to get my side out, I guess. And as I go into this JTX and this new horizon of variety streaming, still going to be doing the podcast, the new branding and everything. I guess I just wanted to clear that up, you know, get it out there. I don't feel burdened with it, but I do feel like, you know, if people watch this video, I'm happy to talk to anybody if they've got any questions. Whether they think I was wrong on something, I will absolutely talk to you in any capacity. I'll talk to you in private messages. I'll talk to you in the comments. I'll even have, if you strongly disagree with what I say, I'd have you on the podcast happily. I don't edit the podcast. As I say, nobody would ever get misrepresented on it. I wouldn't do that to anybody. And again, if you want to see any receipts of what happened, obviously I have all those as well. Everything is backed up. So if you've got to this point in the video, it means you've watched it all. And I just want to say thank you for watching. It's very important if you do begin to watch something like this, that you watch it all the way through. So thank you very much for that, because as it's quite clear, people in the world of social media, people in the world of Twitch, they struggle to read the whole thing and look at the big picture. So I do thank you for that. And going forward, I'm still going to be talking about these kind of issues within the podcast. So if there's anything that you'd like to talk to me about, or even if you'd like to come on the podcast, just drop me a message and let me know, and maybe we can talk. And on a more positive note, I'm extremely pumped for the future and what JTX holds. I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.